Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to T-Ski Tutorials, and this is FPS 1.28. So, in our last episode, we learned how to actually handle all of the ammo, and the clip, and the magazine, and the bullets, and the extra ammo, and all of that crap in the gun. But we don't have any way of seeing whether or not it is working, and whether or not, or how many bullets we have left, how many are in the clip, and all of that good stuff. So we're actually going to be working with the graphical user interface, or the GUI, or the heads-up display, or the HUD, to actually show how many bullets we have left in the clip and how much extra ammo we have on the side. Alright, so let's jump right into our code because there's not really a lot of it. We do have a lot of variables, and these are basically all just to adjust what the HUD is going to look like. And we're going to be putting this all inside of a function called onGUI. And if you're new to the GUI stands for Graphical User Interface. And basically GUI is basically Unity's system of displaying anything on the HUD. Alright, so first let's go through the variables we have. So our first variable is bullet HUD texture, and this is of type texture. So this is basically just going to be an image, whether that's a JPEG, a PDF, or anything like that. And we don't need a material for this. We just need the texture itself. Because we're displaying it on the GUI and not actually something in 3D space. So don't worry about a material in this case. We just need the texture, which is going to be a picture of a bullet. Next, we have AmmoCount rect, and rect stands for rectangle, and it is a variable type, and it's kind of like a vector 3, where it has an X, Y, and Z, whereas a rectangle has an X, Y, a width, and a height. So another difference you want to note between a vector 3 and a rectangle, especially when dealing with the GUI, is we're not dealing with 3D space anymore. We're physically dealing with the computer screen and the screen dimensions. And you always want to remember that 0, 0 is in the top, I think for you it would be over here, the top left corner of the screen. I don't know if I'm pointing in the right direction. Yeah, I think I'm pointing in the right direction. Top left corner of the screen is going to be 0, 0, and then as X gets bigger, it's going to go across this way, and as Y gets bigger, instead of going up, it's going to go down. And same with the width and the height. So when we're dealing with a rectangle, we have X, Y, whoops, right-clicked, width and height. So X and Y is going to be the position of the rectangle, or the top left corner of the rectangle is going to be at this placement on the screen, and then width and height is stretched over from that. So let's say that I wanted to put this instead of in the top left corner, if I want it in the top right corner, I could do something like set it, not 9,000, more like 900 or so, depending on your screen size. Of course, it would be a lot more effective to actually test the screen size as opposed to just randomly guessing. But let's say you're working with a 1080p monitor and we set X to 900. Now we're going to be on the right-hand corner of the screen, and we don't need to change width and height because these are going to be according to the X and the Y. Alright, so going back to our actual variable itself, we have AmmoCount rect. So this is going to be the rectangle that is going to contain the number that is going to show our extra ammo in the gun, or the bullets that are on the side that are ready to be put into the clip or magazine of our gun. And yeah, basically it's just going to be a rectangle, and it's only going to be containing text. So it's just going to display a number in the area that you specify this rectangle. Alright, next we have AmmoStartX. So the reason why I did AmmoStartX is because we're going to be displaying the bullet HUD texture over and over again, and we can't put it all inside of one texture file. We actually need to draw this texture for as many times as the number of bullets we have in the clip. So we're going to do AmmoStartX, and this is where the first bullet is going to be drawn X, or on the X coordinate sideways, where the first bullet is going to be drawn on our HUD. And I have this set as an integer, because you can't actually have uh, fractions when it's dealing with the HUD or the GUI, because we're dealing with pixels and you can't move over half a pixel. Which reminds me, this right here needs to be an integer. That was a mistake of mine. So it needs to be an integer, but it would work as a float. But it's just more accurate when you use an integer because you can't have half pixels on your screen. Alright, next we're going to have ammo Y. The reason why I didn't call this AmmoStartY is because this is going to be a uniform Y position for all of the pictures of bullets, because those aren't going to be going up and down. Only the X is going to be going across the screen, so the Y is going to be constant. Next, we have ammo size, and I have this set as a vector 2, and the X is going to represent the width, and the Y is going to represent the height. So this is going to be the width and height of every bullet on the screen. Next, we have AmmoSpacing, and this is going to be the number of pixels in between each bullet. So we could set this down to a number like 0 if we want them really, really, really close together, and we're dealing with a gun with lots of bullets in the clip. But if we're dealing with, say, a shotgun or something, and there's only 8 bullets, and we don't want them all stretched into a tiny little corner, we actually want to space them out so the player can see how many bullets are left. We can adjust ammo spacing so that basically we can stretch out in and out how much actual space is in between the bullets on the HUD. Alright, next we're going to be going inside of function on GUI. Now remember, you want to write function on GUI just like you would function update, function late update, function awake, function on collision enter. You want it outside of all of the other functions, and you want them to be inside of their own function inside of the script. So function on GUI is called actually sometimes multiple frames a second, depending on the order of the game objects and a bunch of other factors. So you never want to put code inside of function on GUI that doesn't directly affect the GUI or just handles with drawing stuff on the screen. So any other code you're going to want to put inside of the function update loop, collisions, anything like that. So just remember, only handle only handle GUI functions inside of function on GUI. So now we have, first of all, inside of function on GUI, if being held, and here's the opening bracket, and here is the closing bracket, and all of the other code is inside of these two brackets. Now, otherwise, the guns would be displaying how many bullets they have left in the clip when they're on the ground, and then we would have a whole bunch of overlap and overlapping textures of all of the different guns, and we only want to display the gun that we're actually currently holding at this moment in time. So next we have a for loop, and this is a different type of for loop than other for loops we've used in the past. What we have is 3 parts inside of the parentheses, and they are separated by semicolons as opposed to commas or something like that. And the first thing we have in here is var I int equals 1, and then we have a semicolon, so this is kind of like its own line of code. So we're declaring a variable and we're calling it I, and it is of type int or integer, and we are starting at 1. Next we have the condition. So this is going to, the condition basically is going to determine whether or not we are still going to go through the for loop. So if this condition is true, then we are going to continue to go into the for loop. And then this last line, which doesn't need a semicolon at the end, this last line is going to be executed every time we run through the for loop. And I have I++, which is basically short for I plus equal 1. I++ is just short for just add 1 to that variable. So we're going to be counting up y every time we go through this line of code, and if y is smaller than or equal to the current clip, then we are going to continue to run this line of code. But if I is larger than the current clip, then we are going to stop running this line of code. All right, so this is going to be the line of code that we're going to be running through over and over again inside of this for loop. So it is GUI.drawTexture, and the way drawTexture works is you give it a rectangle and a texture, and it will draw that texture inside of that rectangle. And we have our rectangle defined right here, and as you can see, we have rect, and then an opening parenthesis, and a closing parenthesis, and then all the different parts, the X, Y, width, and height, are all separated by commas. So let's take a look at the X. So we have AmmoStartX plus I-1 times AmmoSize.x plus AmmoSpacing. So this is going to determine the X position of where we want the bullet to be drawn. And then we have simply AmmoY. So this is a constant depending on where Y position on the screen we want the ammo to be drawn. And then we have AmmoSize.x, which is the width, and AmmoSize.y, which is the height. So now we have a customized rectangle to define where we want to draw this bullet. And then we're just going to give it bullet HUD texture, which is the texture which we are going to define in the inspector so that we can customize the look of the bullets, or which bullet picture we want to be drawn in each of these bullet slots. So now we have all of the bullets displayed on our screen depending on how many bullets we have in the clip. And now down here we have GUI.label AmmoCount rect. So this is the rectangle which we define up here, which is constant. It's going to define where we are going to display the number of bullets that we have on the side. And we're going to write current extra ammo. And because GUI.label, you give it a rectangle and a string, not an integer, we need to convert this integer into a string. So we're simply going to write after it .toString, and then an opening and closing parenthesis, which is empty. And then we're going to close up the parenthesis of the GUI.label function. So that should be everything we need to display the bullets and the extra ammo on the side. And of course, if you wanted to put more graphical stuff on the HUD, you can put any kind of GUI.drawTexture functions inside of this if being held function, or if statement, I mean. So you can put a GUI.drawTexture function in here to customize the look of your HUD. So yeah, so that is everything you need to know on how to display the bullets and the extra bullets on your HUD. So now I'm going to cut the green screen and go into Unity and show you how to do that inside of Unity. Alright, here we are inside of Unity, and the first thing we want to do is import the bullet that we are going to be using. And as you can see, I have it on my desktop, and it is of type PNG, and I chose that because PNG allows for transparency, so you can see these pixels right here, these pixels right here, and the pixels around here aren't actually visible. They don't show up. And PNG allows for that. So do PSDs, and I usually like to use PSDs because I can open those directly in Photoshop and edit them while the game is, or while Unity is still open. But for this case, I just used a simple little PNG that I made in Photoshop. So why don't we import that? So we're going to go to import new asset, desktop, bullet.hud.png, and bullet HUD. Alright, cool. Now let's go inside of the gun script and let's make the variables that we are going to need. And there was a lot of them, so I need to go back here. So the first is bullet HUD texture. And this is of type texture. And now we have AmmoCount rectangle. and we're going to set this to be a default rectangle of 25, width 50, and height 25. And that should generally do for now, and we can always adjust that later. Next, we want AmmoStartX. Integer, and we're going to have this equal, I think 75 would be pretty good, because I want it to come after the AmmoCount rectangle, and it's 25 over, has a width of 50. Oh, so no, actually I want to put this at 100 because I want some 25 spacing. But we can adjust this very easily in the inspector. So next we have, I believe it is ammo Y, and we're going to have this have a height of 25. Let me double check, make sure that's what it was. And then ammo size, okay. Ammo size vector 2. And let's have this vector 2, and let's have it have a width of, what did I have over here? 1025. Okay. And last, we need AmmoSpacing. And we are going to do a integer, and we're going to have it by default equal 4. But yeah, I'm going to set it as a float just so that we have the option of going into the negatives. And yeah, now we need to go in, or make a new function called function on GUI, and now we need an if statement, which is simply if being held. And the first, we need our for loop. So we're going to do for var I, and it's going to be of type integer, and we're going to start at 1. And if I believe it is, okay, if I is smaller than or equal to the current clip. Smaller than or equal to current clip. So if this condition right here is true, we're going to continue to run through the for loop. And then at the end of each loop, we're going to add 1 to I. So that is what I plus plus stands for. If you write plus plus, it's just short for add 1. And we are going to do GUI.draw texture. And first we need to give it a rectangle. So rectangle, we are going to do, I believe it is AmmoStartX, and let me look at my equation again. It is AmmoStartX plus I minus 1, minus 1, and we are going to multiply that by I think it's AmmoSize.x plus AmmoSpacing. And let me double check, make sure I got that right. Yep, AmmoSize.x plus AmmoSpacing. So that is the x position of where we are going to draw the bullet. And then we want the y, so this is simply ammo y. And then we need the width, so this is AmmoSize.x and AmmoSize.y. So the width and the height. Now we need the texture, which is ammo, no, what is it? I called it bullet HUD texture. Alright. And now, outside of that, we need to draw a label. So GUI.label. And once again, we need a rectangle, but we already have this rectangle completely defined. And we called it AmmoCount rect. So AmmoCount rect. And we want to put in this string, which is current extra ammo. But current extra ammo is an integer, and we need to convert this into a string so that GUI.label can read it properly. So we're simply going to write .toString and an opening and closing parenthesis to show that that is a function. And then closing parenthesis and semicolon. And I believe that is all the code that we need. Yes, it is. Alright, so let's go into Unity and see what that looks like. Oh, duh, I need to actually set the texture in here. So, where is it? Oh. I misspelled current clip. That is why it is not showing up. Now let's go back into Unity. The errors have cleared. And now we can see all of our variables here. So I'm going to go down into my project. I'm going to select the pistol. And then I'm going to drag and drop the bullet HUD texture onto the bullet HUD texture in there. And now it should change it in all of my prefabs in game. So I only need to change one of them, and it will change all of the pistol prefabs. And let me just double check. Okay, that one's the only one being held because we only want one gun to be held at the same time. And it looks like our HUD is looking pretty good. Every time we shoot a bullet, it goes down one. And I always like to just make sure it's working perfectly. So I shoot it until I only see one bullet left on the HUD. Shoot it one more time. And now I reload. So, perfect. It looks like our HUD is working. We can see how many bullets we have left. And if we want to actually edit what the HUD looks like exactly, we can go over here and we can adjust all of these variables in game. So let's say I want them a little bit higher up, so I can adjust that. I want them kind of at the top of the screen. And then the ammo count rectangle, I want more over. I want it up higher, like, I don't know, right over there. And that should be fine. And the width and the height really doesn't matter so much in this case, depending on the text that you're using. I'm just using the default just out of simplicity. What else can I change? The ammo size. So I can make them wider, I can make them skinnier, I can make them taller, and the ammo spacing I can change. And yep, just like I said, if I want to go into the negatives, now if I have a square texture, I can now space them together more tightly. But as you can see, I have it set to -5.7, and if we look really, really closely, we have a really little space and then a slightly bigger space, two little spaces, a slightly bigger space, and it's just not uniform. So I'm going to round this to 6, and now you can see it is nice and even. So, and any integer, it should be nice and even like that all the way across. So even though this is a float variable, typically you're going to want to set it as an integer. Well, I guess technically not an integer because an integer can only be positive. But you just want to set it to a whole number. So now the HUD looks pretty good. But the one thing about adjusting the look of your HUD while you're in game is that as soon as I click end game or click the play button, all of these are going to go right back to the default. So what you're probably going to want to do is grab a piece of paper and write all of these values down, and then you can apply those in here so that you can recreate what you saw in the game. And then one more thing I want to show you. Let's go into here. I'm just going to create a variable just out of showing you guys how to add some decoration to your HUD. So var, I'll just call it ammo decoration HUD rect, and I'm going to copy and paste this rectangle. So this is of type rect equal that rectangle, and I actually would rather have the y be 50. And now I need a texture, so var ammo decoration texture, and this is going to be a texture. And then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to do inside of this if statement, I'm going to do gy dot draw texture in what did I call it? I called it ammo decoration HUD rect and ammo decoration HUD or decoration texture. And I'm going to save that. And now I'm going to take my pistol and I'm going to use the bullet hole as my scroll down, as my texture. So let's play it and see what it looks like. So as you can see, now I can see the bullet hole picture on my HUD. Now of course you would not want to use the bullet hole texture. You would want to use something else, but let's just say you want to add something fancy to your game, and let's say this was a transparent image that was an outline of something that made your HUD look fancy. So any kind of picture you want to draw up in Photoshop or whatever, that is how you would do that. But for now, I'm going to keep it simple and just get rid of this. So I'm just going to change this and create an if statement. So if ammo decoration texture, how much you want to bet I spelled decoration wrong? Yeah, it really looks like I spelled decoration wrong, but oh well. So now if we don't have a texture, we won't get an error. So let me set that to none and save and play, and good. We got no error. So yep, that is looking pretty good. So now you should have all the tools you need to create a really fancy HUD to show how many bullets are left in your clip. And before I end this episode, this is pretty off topic, but I just want to give you one piece of advice. So go over to project settings and quality, and on any quality settings, depending on how you want to set it up, like for right now I am in fastest and I have pixel, where did I set it? I set it really high somewhere. But let's set it in fastest, pixel light count to 100, because I know I was having some trouble earlier with the flash from the muzzle flash or the point light. And when you set it to a really high number, it might make your computer run a little bit slower. But if you want to sacrifice that performance, it looks a lot better and you can see every light every time when you have it set to a really high number like 100. So that way you won't sometimes fire a bullet and then a light won't spawn or show up, and it looks better and you can actually see the flashing in the level around you. So that is just one piece of advice. So you could set, like, say fantastic to 100 and beautiful to, I'd probably still leave it at 100, and good, maybe take it down to 50, simple, I don't know, 25, and so on and so forth. But yeah, and let's see what happens if we set this to 1, because I believe if we set it to 1, it still looks alright. It looks mostly the same, actually. Oh, yep, as you can see, now sometimes the light isn't even showing up. So when there's too many lights, it just doesn't show up on some of the game objects. Like, as you can see, let me try to get that to happen again. It's there. Well, at one point I saw earlier, you could see the flash subtly on this blue part, but you couldn't see on the floor, and that's pretty unrealistic. So that is one reason why I like to raise the pixel light count really high, just because that's not a huge performance affecting thing. More like, where is it? Texture quality and anti-aliasing, anti-strotropic textures, shadows. Well, if you have Unity Pro, shadows. But I'd say anti-aliasing and texture quality are going to be the biggest factors when it comes to how well your game performs on a computer. And light count does definitely have an effect on the performance, but not as much as these other settings. So I typically like to set this really high just so that the muzzle flash always looks perfect in our game. So that was just a quick, completely unrelated tip. So until my next episode, I'll see you guys later, and keep making games.